is Baseball Tonight, the podcast.
Thanks for listening. I'm Buster Olney, and this is the Baseball Tonight podcast for Wednesday, May 14th. On this date in baseball history, in 1967, Mickey Mantle kept a promise to his wife, Merlin, and hit his 500th career homer on Mother's Day. It was a home run in the lower deck in the right field corner of Yankee Stadium. You can, of course, find this on nationalpastime.com every day. Here's a listen to the radio call of Mantle's home run.
3 balls, 2 strikes. Mantle waits. Stu Miller is ready. Here's the payoff pitch by Miller to Mantle. Come on, there you go! Mickey Mantle has hit the 500th home run, and the score at the end of 7 complete innings, New York 6, Baltimore 4.
Josh Reddick made a really interesting decision about his walk-up music, and it paid off, and we'll talk with Tim Kurkjian about that, and we'll update on the great statistical experiment, otherwise known as the Houston Astros, and the pot is percolating on change there. But first, let's get to the headlines.
The first pitch.
The Marlins made it official. Mike Hill, the president of baseball operations for the Marlins, announced that Fernandez has a significant tear in his right elbow. The quote from Mike was, "The sooner we can get a decision," and he's talking about surgery, "the sooner we can get surgery set up and get it taken care of." It was confirmed there is a tear in the elbow and surgery has been recommended. Jose is visiting with his family on his options and what he wants to do and when he wants to do it. So, really bad news. And again, we'll talk to Tim Kurkjian about the response to this all around baseball. It goes way beyond the response to just the news that Jose Fernandez was hurt. Matt Harrison continues to have back troubles. They popped up in his start on Tuesday. He's expected to be examined later today. Kevin Gossman was called up and inserted the Baltimore rotation. He'll pitch against Justin Verlander today. Carlos Quentin was back in the San Diego lineup on last night. It's a good sign for the Padres. Carlos Beltran hopes to avoid surgery. What they found was actually in his elbow a bone spur. He's going to get some treatment. He's going to see if his pain persists, and if it goes away, then he'll play with the cortisone shot. And if he does continue to have pain, he's going to have elbow surgery, and that would take him out of lineup for a while. I watched some of the Reds broadcast last night, and they showed videotape of Jay Bruce taking batting practice. It's just a week after he had knee surgery, and so he might be back sooner than expected. He's not close to returning, but certainly he's making progress. The Brewers, as expected, reinstated Ryan Braun from their disabled list. Byron Buxton, the tremendous prospect within the Twins organization, aggravated a previous wrist injury, so he's being treated for that. He'll be out a few more days down the minor leagues. Last night, we saw some great games, but the best game of the night was in Baltimore. First, Rajai Davis was called out on an attempted stolen base. Tigers manager Brad Ausmus challenged that, and he won the challenge. And so Davis was on base when Torrey Hunter drew a walk, and then Miguel Cabrera hit a 3-run homer to give the Tigers a 3-1 lead. Victor Martinez followed up with a home run. So a great win for the Tigers, 4-1. After the game, Brad Ausmus, the Tigers manager, talked about instant replay and Cabrera's home run.
We didn't really manage much for about 8 innings offensively, but we were able to put some things together. Obviously, in the top of the 9th, the instant replay call was probably the turning point, I guess. It gave us an opportunity, really, with a runner in scoring position to at least tie the game. But then Torrey working the walk, and of course, Miggy's homer. It looked like he might have been safe. I didn't know for sure if he was safe. It was tough to tell from 150 feet. But we did wait for the signal.
The Tampa Bay Rays got a big win. David Price with a complete game, a comeback from the Rays in the 9th inning against Fernando Rodney, their former closer. After the game, David talked about his complete game victory.
Bases coming in there, or I guess staying in the whole game, and then hitting the big homer off of Fernando to lead us off in the 9th, and then everybody rallying, man. Jasmine, Olney, everybody. That was big. I came up here and threw some balls against the wall, so stayed loose as good as I could, and I felt fine tonight. I probably just tried to overthrow a couple pitches, but outside of that, I felt good.
David also talked about how this was a win that the Rays needed.
We needed a win, period. Whether it was a blowout or, a game like that, we had to battle back and then kind of, win late. And it was good.
The Twins had a great night. Chris Parmelee with a walk-off 2-run homer to beat the Red Sox. Ron Gardenhire talked about that after the game.
When you get that late in the game, it doesn't matter who does it, but I'm glad, for Parm, he's worked really hard. He got sent down, frustrated out of spring training, cleared waivers, which is disappointing for a player, and worked really hard down there and got back up here by playing his way back up, which he's supposed to do, and a big one there for him. A big swing and a big win for us against a great team over there. And, you can move him just about anywhere in the outfield. You can play him left, right, and as many guys as we put in center, you probably put him in center, so you could do that too. So it's a good swing, like I said. We'll see how he continues. He's been playing very well for us.
Seam heads rejoice.
Noodle alert!
It's Timmy time.
Is this a great game or what?
With Tim Kurkjian on Baseball Tonight.
And Tim Kurkjian, of course, covers baseball for ESPN. He's the host of the Seamhead edition of Baseball Tonight on Thursdays. I will see him tomorrow. He's currently on his way to Bristol right now. And Tim, we saw something last night that I want to get your take on. I guess it's baseball related, but it sort of isn't. Josh Reddick of the Oakland Athletics decided to change his walk-up music, and the song that he chose was Careless Whisper by George Michael and Wham from the 1980s. Now, Josh, I just want to be clear. We can't play this song?
Not unless you got another $20K hanging around for the rights, Buster.
Okay, but just in case anyone hasn't heard the song, just Google Careless Whisper. It's saxophone heavy. It's very sort of, how would you describe it, Tim? The way the song is. It sounds like something that, you'd probably hear like late at night at 3 o'clock in the morning as a bar's getting ready to close down, wouldn't you say?
Yes, it does not sound like a walk-up song to me for any baseball player. It's just a little bit too slow-moving and everything else. But again, Buster, I'm like the last guy you should be asking anything about music about. I mean, I know who Gene Michael is. I don't know who George Michael is, but I had to listen to the music, and the only thing I could get from it is I listened to the lyrics again, and it says I'm never going to dance again, and that goes for me too, because last time I danced, I was just so indescribably terrible that I decided I will never dance again. So exactly why Josh Reddick is playing this, I don't know, but this is actually the beauty of baseball. Guys will do anything, turn their luck. They will do anything to get them going in the right direction. And even if it's walk-up music, it should be played, as you said, at 3 a.m. Whatever works, works. I never argue with that.
And certainly it worked last night. He hit a home run, had 2 hits, and after the game he told Susan Slusser of the San Francisco Chronicle, it's all the song, it's not my talent, it's all the song. Now, of course, he was joking, and all of his teammates absolutely love it. As Brandon Moss said, he said, I love it. I told him, dude, I am digging it, and he can pull it off. I don't know why. It suits him very well. It's a great song. It's awesome because it's so unexpected, but also it's something to laugh at, enjoy every single time. So Josh Reddick's walk-up music is the talk of baseball this morning, and the Oakland Athletics are the talk of baseball, Tim, because they're now 25-15. They're 4 games ahead in the American League West, and I was looking at some numbers this morning. Plus 73 run differential, by far the best. They've scored the most runs in the American League, and they're second among 30 teams in ERA. I am already kicking myself because late in spring training after they lost Jared Parker, I switched my pick to the Angels to win this division instead of Oakland. How stupid am I?
You're pretty stupid, Buster, but we already knew that before the A's pick. I stayed with the A's in spring training, and just kidding, Buster, of course. I am not amazed they are where they are, and they've done this not just without Jared Parker. They've done it without A.J. Griffin. They've used multiple closers already, meaning their bullpen has been anything but stable. But just another reminder that this team hits its way now through everything. And before this team got hot 2 years ago in June, it didn't hit at all. And I'm thinking this is one of the worst hitting teams I've ever seen. And then they just exploded basically from July 1st on offensively 2 years ago. They were a very good offensive team again last year. And now you look at them and the way they mix and match with that team, it's remarkable. And the aforementioned Josh Reddick, he hit fourth the other day, and then he hit ninth a couple days later. This is how it works with their team. They mix, they match, they find the right guy for the right spot. Derek Norris is hitting 380 or whatever he was the last time I looked. It's an amazing club. Anyone who doesn't believe in the A's and what they're doing simply has not been watching the last 2 years and the first 40 games of this year.
Tim, the Marlins made it official last night. Jose Fernandez is going to miss the season because it's been recommended that he get Tommy John surgery. That final decision has not been made to actually have it, but inevitably that will happen. And I was curious, when you heard this news, what did it feel like?
Well, it felt terrible. It felt just like when Matt Harvey went down last year. You just think, why is this happening to these four young kids? And, how much more can baseball take? How many good young stars are we going to lose? And yet there was also a part of me that said, I'm not surprised anymore. There have been so many guys who've gotten hurt. And I've asked Buster 36 people, what is going on here with this Tommy John epidemic, this elbow issue, whatever, all these injured pitchers? I saw Tom House the other day. Tom House taught me more about the throwing of a baseball than virtually any person I've ever met. He studies this. He's a doctor. He's everything else. And he told me, here's the line he gave me, Buster. We'll talk about this tomorrow night on our show. He said, kids are pitching too much today, and they're not throwing enough. So I said, explain. He said, well, when we were kids, we would throw all the time, rocks, tennis balls, whatever it was. Kids don't do that anymore. Kids are now standing on the top of a mound, and they are pitching all the time. They're pitching 12 months out of the year, and that, as much as anything else, is why these young kids are getting hurt today. And I can't agree more that we have to take the baseball out of the hands of these young kids and tell them, please, go play another sport for 3 months. Put the baseball down. Get off of the mound and quit putting your arm up in that position. It's an unnatural position, and if you do it too many times as a young kid, it's going to come get you when you're 21 years old, like Jose Fernandez. It's just not right, and something's got to be done about it.
What does Tom feel about pitch counts and innings counts? Because certainly in the last, really, since Matt Harvey got hurt, there's been more and more conversation about that topic among executives. And I wrote my column today about the great thing about baseball is the questions being asked why so consistently these days. Why are we doing it this way? And more the executives I speak with are asking the question about why are we setting these innings counts and pitch counts on pitchers? And as one executive said to me yesterday, we don't have a clue exactly what the right number is. What's Tom's take on that?
Well, Tom obviously doesn't want any young pitcher to be abused as far as pitches thrown, innings thrown, anything like that, and I think that's logical. I have a friend of mine who's done a gigantic research study on what happens to teenage pitchers who throw a lot of innings, what happens to them later on. The news is almost never good in those situations. That guy who's been overused in any form as a young pitcher is going to get affected once he gets into his 20s. There's no way around it. I'm not sure if the pitch count thing, Buster, is a good thing or a bad thing because it confuses me so greatly. I just remember Mike Flanagan, the great late Mike Flanagan, used to be asked all the time by his pitchers, what's my pitch count? What's my pitch count? And finally, Mike Messina asked him so many times that Mike Flanagan counted every pitch that Messina threw in the bullpen and everything else. So he went to him in the sixth inning and said, how many pitches do I have? And Mike Flanagan said, 221. And Messina just looked at him and said, okay, I get it. I'm going to stop asking. So we obviously have to monitor this, but somebody is going to have to find an answer to this question. Are these guys throwing way too much, or are we babying them to the point that this is why they're getting hurt? It is a real conundrum for Major League Baseball right now, and it is not good for the game.
It's official. I talked to you yesterday, made an absolutely great point about the pitch counts and innings counts and how the numbers are, essentially standard, where, as we know, it's the industry move to increase a pitcher's innings by about 30 per year. They're being developed. Jose Fernandez had only 11 starts of his first 36 in which he threw 100 pitches or more. But as this executive said to me, look, we're treating them all as if they're a blank canvas when we get them, and they're not. They all have individual histories. We don't know how many pitches they threw before they got to us. We don't know what type of pitches they were throwing. We don't know, where they are physiologically in their development, and that led him to that conclusion. We don't have a clue. And it did sort of raise a larger issue that I wanted to throw at you, and I wrote about this today, about teams thinking about the big picture maybe too much, where in the case of pitchers, and I think now with the benefit of 20/20 hindsight, I felt like when the Nationals shut down Steven Strasburg, I understood the reasons why. I thought they were sound. I think now that based on what we've seen the last few years, you think, it was a missed opportunity. On the other hand, with the benefit of 20/20 hindsight, the Giants are very aggressive in their use of Tim Lincecum, and my God, how much money have they made because of the fact they called him up and they didn't worry about innings counts. They just pitched him, and they wound up winning 2 World Series. And now we have a situation where Gregory Polanco is being held down in the minor leagues by the Pirates because of something that might develop contractually with him in 2017, where they have an opportunity to win now. And I do think, Tim, that it might be worth it for teams to look at this question of why. Why are we doing it this way? Why are we worrying about things down the road when maybe what's being undervalued is winning now? And I will say this, the Oakland Athletics are one team. They don't worry about service time. They don't worry about trying to develop for 2017 the way the Houston Astros have. They're trying to win now, and there is value in that.
Well, I don't think there's any doubt about that, and it's not my money, and I understand what some teams are thinking about, but Earl Weaver used to always teach us, Buster, that when you have a chance to win now, you got to win now, and then you figure out next year. And we have so many teams that are figuring out, they're not even thinking about next year, they're thinking about 3 years from now when a guy's going to be eligible for arbitration. That should not be the focus. Again, it's not my money, but if a guy's ready, you got to go get him. And this is one reason that the A's are playing the way they are and are the organization that they are. They're thinking differently. And they throw guys in the middle of a pennant race and say, this is the way to go, because let's find out what the guy can do in the middle of the pennant race. Let's see what he's made of. And he's the best talent we have. Let's go talent over experience any day. And I kind of believe in that.
Well, think about where the Pirates are, and I saw them over the weekend, which is why this is in the front part of my brain, because they sort of puzzled over it in watching that team. I mean, the right fielders aren't hitting. Gregory Polanco is obviously a big part of their future, which is why they offered him a long-term deal during the course of the offseason. And true, if they wait until later in June, as a lot of teams do, they can avoid an arbitration case with him in the winter of 2016, 2017. But what happens if they miss the playoffs by one game? How much money would they have lost as an organization by not making the postseason? Is it a guarantee that Polanco is going to stay healthy? Is it a guarantee that he's going to be with the Pirates in 3 or 4 years? And that's why I do wonder if in this analysis that has become so important in baseball, if there is some paralysis developing. Last night, to me, one of the best games of the year between the Tigers and the Baltimore Orioles. The Tigers go into the ninth inning. They're down 1-0. Tommy Hunter came in to try to close it out. Rajai Davis attempted to steal a second. He was initially called out. Brad Ausmus, the Tigers manager, challenged the call. Upon review, he was called safe. Torrey Hunter, with a great at-bat, works a walk. And then Tommy Hunter gives up a 3-run homer to Miguel Cabrera. Victor Martinez hit a home run as well. They go on and win the game. And I think we can sort of put to bed the slump that Miguel Cabrera was in the early part of the year, yes?
Yes, and I was always amused by that. You know, we're 20 games in and we're wondering what's wrong with Miguel Cabrera. Of course, ignoring this unbelievable track record that he's had and ignoring the discussion we had, you know, less than 6 months ago when we were rating the greatest hitters and the greatest right-handed hitters of all time, and his name kept coming up, and then we're worried after 20 games. The game is really hard, Buster, and even the best hitters don't look so great for 20-game stretches. You never, ever, ever worry about Miguel Cabrera. And I watched the ninth inning of that game last night, and you're right, Torrey Hunter took a borderline pitch on the inside part of the plate to draw ball 4. It was a great at bat, but he's a smart hitter. And even though he's a free swinger, he knows if I get on base and Tommy Hunter hangs a cutter here, Miguel Cabrera is going to hit a home run, which is precisely what happened there. And that's why you never worry about Cabrera, and you watch veteran teams like the Tigers, and that's why they are where they are, because they understand how the game is played. And again, in the Orioles case, I love the way that team plays, and they belong in first place in a very difficult division right now, but they're going to have to figure out their bullpen if they're going to win that division. And, you know, Tommy Hunter made a bad pitch last night to the absolute wrong guy.
I was going to ask you that. Do you think that he'll continue as closer?
You know, I don't think they have another option, Buster. And last year with Jim Johnson, when he struggled, they didn't have another option because Tommy Hunter, despite his aggressiveness, he's not afraid, but he can only pitch 2 days in a row, I was told. He can't go 3 in a row, and he has trouble doing back-to-back games. And as a closer, that's really difficult. So I think you can see him throw 100 miles an hour one day, but if you use him, you know, even like a normal closer would be used, that might be too much for him because his arm may not be suited. I just don't know where they turn. I don't think there's another guy on their club that can close, because if there was, he'd be closing already, and Tommy Hunter would be used as an eighth-inning guy, which he was so good as setting up Jim Johnson.
I wanted to ask you about this, about the Orioles as well. Matt Wieters, of course, was placed on the disabled list on Sunday. He's got an elbow issue, and the Orioles aren't telling us exactly what the elbow issue is. They're not required to, but clearly it's something that is potentially affecting his throwing. And I do wonder about this. He's a free agent after 2015. He's got a lot at stake in 2015, given that dynamic. And I've seen this happen with other players in the past, where at some point what becomes especially important to them is, I got to make sure I'm healthy in my free agent year, which makes me wonder, you know, will there be a time this summer? And from what I'm told, essentially this decision needs to be made by July 1st. Whatever he's got in his elbow, it needs to be fixed in surgery by July 1st to guarantee that he'll be okay at the start of next season. And I got to believe at some point that he may raise the white flag and say, I need to make sure that I'm healthy for next year. That's my experience. What about yours?
Well, I think you're right. The one thing we have to understand about Matt Wieters is he is a pro's pro, and all he cares about is winning. But, you know, you can't discount the fact that free agency is looming and a difficult decision is ahead. And I wouldn't want to be in his shoes. I would think he would look at it and say, we're going to have a chance to win next year, but the only way we're going to win next year, he won't say this publicly, of course, is if I'm healthy and I'm catching every day. And he may look at it like, I have to be healthy and catching every day if we're going to win this year, and I might not be healthy enough to do that. So this is a very tricky thing. I'm gonna err on the side that Matt Wieters is going to play through this. He's going to play hurt. He's going to catch, and it's going to hurt when he throws, but he's not going to look at free agency before he looks at winning this year. That's who I think Matt Wieters is. If he goes the other way, you cannot fault him for it, but I think he's going to say, I'm staying with our club this year, and I'm going to fight through the pain.
Well, there actually was a comparable situation. You remember a couple of years ago, Brian McCann, catcher of the Atlanta Braves, had a terrible shoulder issue. It was affecting him. He worked like crazy to play through it, and because he wanted to give them a chance to win in that season. And after the season was over, he wound up having shoulder surgery. He was much improved by it. He actually wasn't able to start playing until early May, I believe, in 2013, and he wound up getting a pretty good deal for $85 million.
Right. This is something we're going to have to monitor the rest of the summer because, to repeat here, Matt Wieters is that important to the Orioles. They are not going to the playoffs if he's DH or if he's not playing. That club is built around its defense, and even though they have some brilliant defensive players in the infield, it starts with the catcher, the way he runs that club and the way he throws, and we're going to have to monitor this the rest of the way because it could be the critical piece to who wins the whole division.
Exactly. Hey, Tim, thanks for doing this.
Okay, Buster. See you.
Jesus Ortiz covers the Astros for the Houston Chronicle. And, Jesus, I was just talking to Tim Kurkjian about the whole idea of essentially deferring today for a long-term plan for the sake of winning down the road. And there's no better example of that right now, I think, than the Houston Astros because baseball's great sabermetric science experiment where they essentially deferred in recent years. Basically decided, look, we're going to try to build from the ground up. We're not going to worry about results at the big league level. We're not going to spend money on some veteran journeyman to try to stabilize the major league team. We're just going to build the farm system, and we'll live with the results at the big league level. And of course, they're the first team since the 62 to 65 New York Mets to lose at least 106 games in 3 consecutive seasons. And so far this year, it's ugly. 13 and 27. They got a run differential of minus 56. So I want to ask you that question first off. Big picture, where do you see the Astros as they stand right now?
Big picture, I see them having success in 2018. The problem, and by success I mean, competing for the wild card, just shooting that low. But in the meantime, I don't know if they'll alienate so much of the fan base that we have a Pittsburgh Pirates situation here where nobody cares.
Now, tell me this, some of their top prospects, for example, Carlos Correa, give me an update on those guys particularly.
Well, Carlos Correa, he just got off a 9-game hitting streak. He missed a little over a week with a shoulder problem, but since he's been back, he's on a 9-game hitting streak as of yesterday. He's a stud. Mike Foltynewicz is really picking it up. And John Singleton, second in the PCL in home runs. And he's the one he and Foltynewicz are the ones that everybody here is eager to see. And they are the poster boys of why fans are upset here because, as you mentioned, some scouts, and I don't know if you heard this, but some scouts have dubbed Jeff Luhnow Jeff Lose Now. And Foltynewicz and Singleton are the primary reason why people are wondering, why won't you call those guys up? Because there aren't better players here than those two. Well, there are, but Foltynewicz would probably be your number 3 starter, number 4 starter, or your closer here.
Where do they stand with Mark Appel, who was the number 1 overall pick last year?
Mark Appel, he's thrown a couple of games in extended spring training. I talked to Jeff Luhnow about him just 2 days ago, and he's probably a week away. And when they do send him back, Luhnow told me that it's probably going to be back to Lancaster. But when they have this tandem starting rotation, piggyback, which is a 4-day pitching routine instead of the traditional 5. But when he comes back, he's going to be on a 5-day rotation, unlike the kids who are on 4-day rotations. But he's coming close, but I have no idea how if it's this week, but it's probably likely next week or so they'll consider sending them to Lancaster again.
What exactly was the problem for him working in that 4-day tandem rotation?
He just never adjusted to it. It's a huge adjustment. And in his case, he had the appendectomy like January 31st. So he started spring training off behind everybody else. And then they decided he had thrown no more than 3 innings in a game in spring training, and they decided that he was ready to go to Lancaster, and he got beat up pretty bad. And almost just to over-dramatize the situation, the day that Gray, the guy who went second overall, it was the third, pitched a near-perfect game in Double-A, he got roughed up and didn't go but 2 1/3 in Lancaster. And after that start, they decided to send him back to extended spring training to build up his arm and to help him adjust to the 5-day routine after failing to adjust to the 4-day routine.
Yeah, and I know that they've talked about this as they don't think it, or they're sort of casting it as hey, it's no problem, it's just a blip in the radar. I'm waiting to see him pitch. I mean, ultimately, he's not going to get close to the big leagues until he's pitching in games, and it'll be interesting to see when that happens. You've lived in that city a long time, and you mentioned the reaction from fans in Houston. What's the feeling toward the Astros now from the core fans?
It's indifference, as you know. There's nothing worse in sports than indifference, in my opinion. When I got here in 2001, this was a great baseball town. The 2004 and 2005 Astros. I mean, I covered the Mets during the Subway Series, and I would tell people, I'm like, Houston loves baseball almost as much as New York loves baseball, and you've been here. When the baseball's good, the fans are enthusiastic, some of the best in the country. But on Monday, they had a crowd of 14,000, which was their smallest crowd, which, okay, you'd expect that, but not against the Rangers, not against a team where in 2001, wow. 2004, when those teams played in Arlington, the Houston fans would pack the stadium in Arlington. And now they can't even pack, they have the smallest crowd for the Rangers. So if the smallest crowd is for the Rangers, just imagine how bad it's going to get the rest of the summer.
What's the situation with their television deal?
No progress. Every bit of news seems to be worse. There was a story Monday where one of the major cable satellite providers pointed out that each day there's less value for the network and less incentive to pay the money they want, and I think they want something like $3 a household. I ultimately, and I hate to say this because I have a lot of good friends who work there, but ultimately I think what will end up happening is that the CSN dies. I don't see nothing positive has come out in the last 6 months. Every bit of news seems to be worse than the last bit of news.
I've heard this, Jesus, that within the organization that there is mounting pressure to have success, not necessarily to win, but they are getting sensitive to the fact that people are fans and people in the media, people like myself, are casting them as being a losing team and a team with fading hope, and that there is more pressure to win more games now. Is that what you've heard?
Yeah, absolutely. Jim Crane has made it clear he wants more wins this year. I wrote a column right at the end of May saying, when they sent out Fultonevich and Singleton and Springer, even though the coaching staff, Porter, all lobbied for them, I wrote a column that says it's not even April and the Astros are already in wait till next year mode. And Jim Crane had an impromptu, rare press conference just to discuss my column and to say, no, we're going to win now. I expect these guys to be 500. Well, barring a miracle, they're not going to be anywhere close to 500, and they're going to be lucky to avoid losing 100 games. And moreover, with Nolan Ryan here, Jim Crane now has an expert, now has a sounding board, unlike he's ever had before. Because in the past, Jeff Luhnow, whatever he said, nobody knew better. Everybody he's hired here is dependent on him for their baseball careers. Well, as you know, Nolan Ryan's accomplished quite a bit, and Nolan Ryan can be honest. Nolan Ryan can tell Jim Crane, you know what, this is my opinion when you ask it. And I think Jim Crane knows better now than what he's been fed the last couple of years. And I mean, he deserves part of the blame for this because this is a plan that he approved. But I don't think he expected this plan to be so delayed. And, you know, they went out and spent money, Astros money, which isn't much, but they spent quite a bit of money this year for them to fix the bullpen. Well, the bullpen's an utter mess, the worst in baseball. You know, and the Dexter Fowler trade looks worse by the day. You know, Jordan Lyles has, I think, 7 fewer victories than the entire Astros. Well, 8 now, you know. You know, he's 5-0. Barnes is hitting well. So there's a lot of frustration. There are a lot of people within the Astros organization who want to see Singleton up, who want to see Fultonevich, who are not happy with the plan. And ultimately, it's all going to boil up, and Crane's going to have to make a decision, you know, which plan he follows, because, you know, they can want to win long term, and everybody understands that. But you have to give the fans some hope now. And it's not even June, and they're already, you know, they've already lost complete hope.
Now, I'm not around the team every day, and I always think that that's the best way to get a true reading on exactly what, you know, who's going to be in the line of fire, if changes are made, if different things are tried. But so just in general, I was going to ask this. This situation seems to me like a kettle that's beginning to boil where it's going to lead to something. Something's going to happen, and I don't know what that is. Would you agree with me? Something is going to change.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think Jim Crane made a move a year ago that surprised everybody. He fired George Pistolas, and it was the best move Jim Crane has done since buying the Astros. And he brought in Reed Ryan. And I said in spring training that year, I told some people, I said, I wouldn't be surprised if Pistolas is gone by the All-Star break. And people were saying, no. I said, watch. And he was gone by May. Jim Crane is one of these owners who will let you do your job until he decides one day, we're done. And I wouldn't be surprised if he starts making some changes this year because either he doesn't believe or his ownership doesn't believe in the plan. And there's pressure. You know, I talk to these guys and I sense it. You know, if the coaching staff could be honest and could speak freely without fear of, you know, throwing their players under the bus or retribution even, they'd tell you. They've been begging for John Singleton. So the losing isn't on Bo Porter because everybody here in Houston, including the ownership, knows that he's not given the best players available for the roster. So I think, you know, and we all know that history shows that, you know, the GM fires the manager before the pressure lands on the GM. But I wouldn't be surprised if it's almost you know, Jeff Luhnow has to show more this year than even Bo Porter.
Well, you know, given the situation that they're in, I've heard stories about Jim Crane in meetings, and he's an action guy, and that's his reputation. And I heard a story, and I can't give specifics of it without giving my sources away, but they basically were saying that his attitude was like, get it done. What are we doing? Let's go. And he's very direct, and he's very demanding, and, you know, that's something worth remembering as we go forward. Hey, Zeus, thanks for doing this.
No, thank you. Let me just add to that. And he's gone on the record to tell Jeff Luhnow, I've heard in meetings, and he's told people that he's told Jeff, we're a major league team. I don't want to hear much more about the minors. He said that before this season. So this, like, you know, celebrating the minors is no longer fun for him.
We'll talk to you later, Jesus.
Thank you very much.
One last thing.
Mariano Rivera was on Mike and Mike essentially to talk about his book that just came out, and he was asked about what he said, preferring Dustin Pedroia over Robinson Cano in the book.
There was a comparison about just a natural talent. I have Robbie. He has this natural giving talent, but sometimes you just take it for granted. I always was on top of Robbie, telling him, you know, you need to do this. You need to always be aware of what's going on around. On the other hand, you have Pedroia that is 5'5", if that, soaking wet with tremendous heart. You know, I think this guy has to fight for everything that he has. I'm sure that hasn't come easy. You see him hustling, and you see him running to first base, diving for these balls, going and believe that he is a giant. You know, and those are the type of players that you want to have in your world.
You know, I found that to be interesting because when I heard that he spoke about this, Josh, I thought he was going to back off and say, no, it wasn't what I meant. It was taken out of context in my own book. Who was the football player who said that once, that he denied saying what was in his book? I'm trying to remember who that was, but it might have been Charles Barkley, actually.
Yeah, I think it was Barkley, but then when I think of that, I think of Yogi Berra, who says, I didn't say half the things I said.
Exactly, but I was prepared to, and I love Mo more than just about any player I ever covered, and I was going to sort of chastise him and say, come on, own the thing. But I thought right there he backed it up. Would you agree?
I would totally agree. I had the same thought when I saw it on our list of sound bites. I said, uh-oh, here we go. He's backing off. But no, he's standing by his statements, it sounds like.
Yeah, and you know what? Mariano, I always tell people he was dead honest when you call him as a player, when you covered him as a player. So I give a tip of the cap. I mean, he explained himself. He explained his reasoning for what was in the book, preferring Pedroia over Cano, and you know what? It's better than that's not really what I meant or something like that. So that's pretty good. That's it for today. My thanks to Tim Kurkjian and to Jesus Ortiz, and of course to Josh Macri, who produced this podcast. Have a great day, and thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Baseball Tonight podcast. If you're playing fantasy baseball, don't forget to listen to the Fantasy Focus podcast. Check out all podcasts at ESPN.com/PodCenter. Baseball Tonight, the podcast.
Someday, people will say, I knew Ty, Ryan, Chase, Dylan, when he was kart racing in 38th place. Someday, people will say, he's on a roll, on fire. Someday, people will shake their heads and say, man, that kid sure did grow up fast. Names are made here. The NASCAR Nationwide Series at Iowa. Sunday at 1:30 Eastern on ESPN.